Okay. Would you all open your packets to, there's not page numbers on this, but the page that says, What is Night and Who is Elie Wiesel?
That. This is the thick corner.
Elie Wiesel.
Does not want
Okay. While you're opening that, let me explain what you're going to be doing today. We're going to learn a little bit more about the author of this novel and what the novel itself is about. Okay. Let me fix this camera. Okay. Okay. Learn about the author of the novel and also why we're studying it. Okay. So, first off, the first thing you need to understand is this is written by a man. Elie Wiesel is a man. Okay. Thank you. Oh, here's a packet for you, right there. Okay, Elie Wiesel is a man, and the pronunciation is important. It is Elie Wiesel. Can you say that with me? Elie Wiesel. Can you do it a little more enthusiastically? No? Okay. Elie Wiesel, in addition to writing this book, also was a professor of Holocaust studies before he passed away 3 years ago. He was there. He was 15 when the Holocaust happened, and this book is his story. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about where he was before writing this, and then we'll get into what the book's about. Okay, I'll try not to spoil too much because we are going to read it. By the way, this is the book right here. You'll find it on your desk. Okay, it's about 114 pages. Elie was born in Sziget, Transylvania, 1928. That's where the book starts too. About the first chapter or two is in Transylvania, in Sziget. He lived a fairly normal Jewish childhood. Grew up kind of studying religion. It talks about this a little bit in the book. He was really into mysticism, which is this branch of Judaism that sort of believes in supernatural things. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about that in the book. But this novel is about his experiences when he was 15. How many of you guys are 15 years old? Oh my gosh, you're the same age as Elie Wiesel.
Give me a month.
Okay, we'll So I thought this would be a really good book for us to study. One, because it's about someone your age. One, or two, because it's someone who went through something very, very difficult. And two, it's just a real focused book, and we'll get to that in a sec. Okay. So when he was 15, he was taken away from his from Sziget by the Nazis. Okay. This happened in 1944. The Nazis, the U.S. had already entered the war by the time that happened, and D-Day had happened, and so the Nazis were really like fighting a losing war at this point. And because of that, Hitler amped up his rounding up and execution of the Jews. So they started actually executing people at a rate of 8,000 per day. Okay. So anyway, Elie is part of this group. This is him when he's 15 years old, and then this is him in the concentration camp. You can see his cheekbones have basically disappeared. He's certainly emaciated. But he enters the work camp in 1944, and that's when the book takes place. Okay. After what happens in the book, Elie is rescued from the concentration camp. Spoiler alert. Whoops. In 1945. After that, he goes to Paris to study. This is his passport to Paris right here. And chooses to study religion. Eventually becomes a newspaper writer when he's 20, and the people in his office just won't leave him alone. They're like, you need to tell your story, and the world needs to hear your story. And so he wrote Night at age 25. Okay. It was 1958 at that point. The war had been done for about 13 years. That doesn't make sense. 8 years. It had been done for 8 years, okay? And Elie, this is always important, but in interviews, especially after he won the Nobel Prize, Elie always considered himself a messenger among the living for the dead. He saw so much death and destruction in the concentration camps and in his journeys that he always thought his duty as a survivor was to represent those people that had passed away. You don't have to write all of this down, just enough that you know who our author is. If you'll look at the book on your desk, you'll notice that it's translated by Elie Wiesel. That was his wife he met in Paris. So now we've studied 2 people who work closely with their wives. Writing's a great career. You gotta work with your wife. Of course, when I had to work with my wife during quarantine, it wasn't so. It was fine at first. It's just 2 people. Like, you kind of need work as an escape, and I think it's fine to have that, right? Right, Mrs. Johnson?
Absolutely.
See, you hear that, Catherine? It's fine. It's okay. So, what is Night? What is our book Night? Well, Night was written by Elie Wiesel at 25, which means it takes place, or it was written 10 years after it took place. Interestingly enough, it's part of a trilogy, the Night, Dawn, and Day trilogy. We're only going to be reading Night, but Dawn is a work of fiction, and then Day is back to his story. So he writes his story of when he was 15, and then he goes back to this work of fiction, and then the Day is what's happened since that. So it's pretty interesting. For the trilogy, he won the Nobel Peace Prize, as we talked about earlier. But this story details the horrors of the Holocaust, and it also shows how people reacted to tragedy in different ways. And that's the reason we're studying it, is because of that reaction to tragedy. We're going to do a thematic study and a thematic essay about this, and it's good because it really focuses in on that theme, and we can use sort of a focused lens to look at it. Elie writes in a detached and honest way that is equally terrifying and beautiful. You know who said that? Me, this morning. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Don't you guys think I should write like reviews for newspapers? Because I could. If any of your parents work for the Herald Journal. Anyone? No? Nobody going to put a word in? Alright, well, thanks for nothing. Okay, so that's where we're going with the book. Why are we reading this? First of all, I think it's beautifully written. It's short. It's nice and focused, right? And it teaches some really important lessons. Because it's short and the focus is so narrow, I mean, Elie is the only character that's through the whole novel, and I think there are like maybe 5 or 6 more named characters. Okay, so not a ton of characters, not a lot of details to get lost in. Because it doesn't have that, we can really focus on the analysis that we're doing for our essay. And this is a really good skill, to read a book in preparation for a project or in preparation for an essay. A skill that you will have to use in the coming years, but they might not study the novel with that essay in mind. So I want to do it now where we're doing that. Now, in regards to that, I sounded like the girl from the Ring there. In regards to that, if you'll change the page, turn the page to the next one in your packet, the character study guide. Your assignment for this unit is going to be producing an essay about a theme, so a thematic essay, just like we did, except you're going to be comparing and contrasting 2 different reactions to tragedy. This character study guide will help you organize those reactions so you can pick and know where to go either. So on the left you see the character and sometimes the situation that they're reacting to and the page number. Okay, as we read through the novel, we're going to fill this out together, and this will help you write your essay, okay? So that's happening. Okay, and then you'll just choose 2 of those reactions to write your essay about. The other reason I wanted to study this novel is because it is still timely today. Unfortunately, the Holocaust wasn't the last tragedy or the last even genocide committed on the earth. There are currently genocides all over the place, in the East and in Africa. So it's important to read so we're aware of these things and we're paying attention. Also, fascism, you know, the idea that Hitler had about cleansing the nation and bringing honor to his people, still is an idea that's pretty popular today. There are parties all over the world, including in the United States, that believe in this idea. Okay, so it's good that we see this. And there's currently a Holocaust denying movement, right? People that are saying that this stuff never happened, and this book will teach us that, will give us kind of a first-hand account of all that. So I'm excited to get into this. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. Are there any questions about the book itself? Okay, the other thing we're going to be doing, in addition to the essay, is there's going to be a test on vocabulary at the end of this. So we're going to really focus on vocab terms and new words that'll be new to you in the book. Okay, if you'll turn past the character study guide, you'll find the vocabulary section that looks very similar. Okay, these are all the vocabulary words from the book. There's 2 pages of them. As we read, your responsibility will be to look those up and to find definitions for them and synonyms in preparation for our vocabulary test, okay? At first, we'll help you with that by looking at context clues and by looking things up for you, but by the end of the novel, we want you doing that on your own, okay? The one other thing that I'll say, this is most of the vocabulary in the book, but there's also quite a few Yiddish words and phrases. Does anyone know what Yiddish is? Yiddish? How about you, Diego? You don't know what Yiddish is? Yes, Evan.
Kind of like it's only popular Jewish language and
Yeah, it's like Jewish slang almost, right? They're words that, like if you've ever heard kaputz or chutzpah or... Mrs. Johnson doesn't want me looking at her. Evan, do you know any other words that are Yiddish? Yeah, they're kind of. There are some Yiddish words in English. I should look those up. Here, I'm going to do that real quick. Yiddish. I have to have both my hands. Bagel, bubka, chutzpah, futz, to futz about, klutz, locks. Yeah, those are all Yiddish terms. Okay. Anyway, so there's quite a few of those. We'll kind of use those to practice using context clues to find out vocabulary. Those probably won't be on the test unless they're really, really easy. So vocab test and an essay in this packet is all you have to do for this unit. Any questions about that? We'll be reading this all in class together since we don't have enough copies of the book to send home. Okay? Awesome. No questions? Then I'm going to end this recording.